Well, hello everyone and welcome. It's Kelly with Women for One, and I am really honored to be speaking with our guest today. She's someone who's certainly doing her part to make positive change for women throughout the world, and you know that's what we're all about at Women for One. So Claire Zammit is a teacher and a leader and a mentor. Actually, I've taken inspiration from her in creating Women for One, and a successful conscious entrepreneur who focuses almost all of her time and energy working with women so they can unleash that much needed feminine power into our world. She's the founder of the Global Feminine Power Courses for Women, and she's also the co-founder and president of Evolving Wisdom, and it's a 2013 Inc. 100 company, which I love because it shows where we're going with women and women as being change agents in the world right now. And I'm looking forward to talking to her about that. I first saw Claire present 2 years ago in New York City at the Emerging Women Conference, and I just was so inspired by her and reassured by her message as it's so aligned with Women's for One vision for the world. So welcome, Claire.
Thanks, Kelly. So happy and excited to be here with everyone, and just so inspired by what you're creating, and grateful for you bringing us all together in this way.
Oh, thank you. And I'm really grateful to you because I think it's all about the power of women coming together and creating these different avenues for us to have our voice heard and to make positive change in the world. So thank you, Claire. In order to give our community a little insight into you personally and tell us how you came to where you are today, can you just share a little bit of information about yourself, about what your journey entailed to this moment today?
Sure. Well, it happened about 10 years ago. It's a little over that, where I really entered into a dark night of the soul, where I felt really depressed and anxious. And it was very painful and confusing because I was a quote unquote powerful woman. Right?
Right.
I had graduate degrees. I had prestigious coaching certifications. I'd had a pretty successful career. I'd led a team of 50 women, and I had friends, and I had never had any trouble attracting love interests. But there was this kind of, I don't know how to describe it. It's like a deep signal from deep inside my soul that I was really off course from my destiny. That's the only word that I now have for it. That there was some deeper potential for who I was as a person, for the contribution that I had to make, for my relationships, for my life. And in spite of my kind of power and strength and all of my ability to make it happen, I had absolutely no idea where to get started. And I stopped and I paused, and I recognized when I looked at my life that even though I'd accomplished success, that all of the things that I had done were really about supporting somebody else's vision and voice being expressed in the world and not my own. And even though I'd had these different romantic relationships, I noticed I emotionally felt somewhat alone, and I was always giving more than I was receiving. And, I kind of, in taking stock of things, I just realized in that time that I had to do something really different. And so I just made a commitment at that particular juncture to really find out what this thing was. And I felt kind of crazy because I walked away from a lucrative career, the trajectory that I'd spent a decade building, and kind of left different relationships. And I really went in search of finding what this was. And that journey led me from my home in Australia to America to study and to, take a lot of different programs. And what I discovered was that my experience that I was having was something that millions of women were also feeling. It's this, what I've come to call it's this power paradox, where, on the one hand, we feel really capable. We have all of this upward momentum from the last 50 years of feminism, where we can, feel like we can make it happen. But on the other hand, we feel really powerless to create and cause the things that we most deeply yearn for. And most of us have been blaming ourselves that somehow, there's something wrong with us, that we can't figure it out. And what I really discovered was it's not personal at all. And it actually isn't a personal failure or breakdown. It really has to do much more deeply with the whole way that we have been cultivating and orienting to power in our culture, and a radical shift that women are now on the precipice of leading. So let me maybe unpack this a little more. So for most of human culture and civilization, the goal has really been to survive, to achieve, to accomplish. Certainly, the way that power has been defined in our culture, if you look up the word power in the dictionary, it's to do, to act, to accomplish. The system of power in the world that women have been mastering over the last 50 years is a masculine system of power that's sourced from logic, linear thinking, analysis, strategy. You have a plan or you have a goal, you break that down into parts and you execute the plan. And it's a fabulous system if the things that you want to create are largely in the external world. Like you want to build a house, you can have a plan, you can order the bricks, you can assemble a team, you can execute that plan. The problem is what's waking up in women now, we're actually leading the way up Maslow's hierarchy with where the organizing principle of our life is this higher order of human potential. We want to self-actualize. We want to self-realize, And so the power system that got us this far isn't sufficient to get us to where, what's now become possible, kind of paradoxically through the success that we've had. So, the things that we're yearning for as women that are waking up, it's not just to have achievements, as though, even though achievement is important, it's not just to have success. It's actually to self-express. It's to really become all that we can be. It's to fulfill on a higher possibility of our relationships, of our potentials, not to just have power in the world as it is, but to really create the world that could be. All of this is a much higher order of things. And to do that, what I've discovered is we really need to cultivate a new system of power that is sourced from the feminine principle of connection, right? So you can't, I could never put myself even on a vision board to imagining myself teaching feminine power to hundreds of thousands of women. I could never have put the relationship with my husband on a vision board because it was outside anything I'd had in my experience in the past.
I so agree with you so much. I mean, it makes me think of that What the Bleep movie when they show the Native American watching the ship and they can't even see it. You can't even see it, the ship.
Right.
Because it's because you can't even envision it. And I so relate to what you're saying because I had everything too, and I was deeply depressed, and it was like, wait a minute, I have this beautiful family, these great children, the house, the car, the money, like I had it all, and I was exactly where you were, and I think there's a lot of women that can resonate with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But getting to that place of connection that you talked about, that was the one that really jumped out at me. So can you talk a little bit more about that? I mean, you're saying like self-expression, become all we can be is the goal, right? It's more self-actualization internally. But that connection piece, I'm really intrigued to hear you speak on that.
Well, so, creating a feminine system of power, so creating from and again, I really want to underscore this. I love to underscore this. There's nothing wrong or bad about masculine power. It's very good and useful for a certain set of things, right? So, like back to the building the house example, that's a really great power system if you want to build a house. But if I want to meet my soul partner and I want to, discover my calling, I want to really contribute meaningfully to the world. Those aren't necessarily things that we can create with that same system. Mm-hmm. So creating with a feminine system of power is much more like harnessing the forces of energy in nature. So rather than create a plan and a strategy, you're creating conditions in which your potentials will actually organically begin to emerge. So you don't have to, you can, like, if you have fertile soil, sunshine and rain and the right nutrients, and you have seeds and you plant them, they're going to, a force bigger than you is going to propel them to grow. They don't need to be project managed.
I love that.
Right? Mm-hmm. So, and it's the same thing with our own potentialities and our relationships, that, when we learn to actually orient in a different way, we create these incredibly rich conditions in which there's a lot of synchronicity, there's a lot of flow, there's a lot of clarity. There's a tremendous amount of support. And, it's just a very different system that's actually critical to be able to self-actualize and self-realize these larger possibilities.
I love that you're saying all this, and it's funny. I take notes during conversations to highlight certain times in a conversation, and I just gave up because I think everything you've said so far, people need to listen to. So I'm just going to tell people to listen to this whole conversation because I just think what you're saying about connection and the synchronicity and the flow and the clarity, it just gets me excited because I don't talk to a lot of people that are teaching what I'm aligned with. I talk to a lot of people that believe in it, but you're a teacher and a mentor in this. So how do you take people through this process to get them to cultivate that soil internally?
Well, sure. And I'd love to share about that. I teach this whole process in a 7-week course and in 9 months trainings, and I teach other women how to teach this in terms of how to awaken with it. But the core premise of the core way of sourcing feminine power, it has to do with forging a deep connection to yourself and showing up in your life in ways that are aligned with who you truly are. It's sourced from a connection to an intelligence and an energy in life that's bigger than you, that gives you access to an inner guidance system that is deeper than your mind. There's a source of wisdom in yourself, a navigation system that's outside of your conscious mind that you can access, but you need to have a deeply connected, trusting, embodied experience that the universe is really supporting your success. And there's a way to create that so you can access a knowing and a courage and an intuition that has you be able to make quantum leaps in terms of what it is that's going to be most generative of these potentials. And the third area that we work with has to do with connection. We're really brought up in this connection to others. It's all sourced from connection, but right. Connection to yourself, connection to the energy and intelligence of life, connection to others. Meaning, there's a whole way that we're conditioned to thinking that we're weak or insufficient if we can't do it by ourselves. Or, that we, that right. somehow, and it's such a double bind for women because we feel like, to be worthy of receiving support, we have to not need support. Mm-hmm. So, but if we need support, it means that we're weak and we're not worthy. And so we're kind of embarrassed to actually let other people know that we need help. So we totally shift that whole paradigm into recognizing that, of course, we are just one person.
Right.
And none of us can become ourselves by ourselves. And the more support we can generate, the more powerful we can become. Mm-hmm. And so it's learning how to source power from our relationships, from ourselves, from life. And when we begin to create with that system, it's amazing how quickly we can get traction. Mm-hmm. And it's not just about learning how to manifest an object or something, or, like a parking space or the right shoes. As fun as it is to use kind of creative spiritual principles to do that, what this system of power really gives us access to is really just unleashing the energy of your potential to gain and gather momentum in your life. So, how your life can change when you're with the right partner, when you're able to create the right project, when you're able to, feel confident to be visible and seen in the world. This is the power system that really really gives us access to the source of development and power that really enables us in these areas of self-actualization. And there's 8 key areas I've really discovered are so powerful and so key, are awakening for women. I'd be happy to share those with you.
That would be great. Before we go into the 8 key areas, though, I do have a question, because I have a million questions coming to my head. But one of them that I wanted to ask you about is, when you're talking about feminine power, and you defined power before, with the feminine and masculine energies, I have a lot of men in my life that have really embodied their feminine in a lot of ways. Are you talking, can you just clearly define that term feminine power? And also, I'm of the belief that really we're in the age of starting to integrate the masculine and the feminine energies more powerfully. And do you do that with these eight keys as well?
Absolutely. Well, so women have been cultivating masculine power in ways that men are now cultivating feminine power, a more feminine kind of power. And so it's not gender-based,
right,
in any way, shape, or form. It's, it's a system that's sourced from, masculine power is sourced from logical linear thinking, analysis, strategy, goals, steps. Feminine system of power sourced from receptivity, connection, intuition, relatedness, and a connection to the deeper potentials inside of you and inside of life. And what I find is that because this feminine system of power is inherently sourced from connection, everything gets integrated. So nothing that you've ever developed or cultivated is ever lost. What happens is it's integrated at a higher order. So I found, I did a lot of other modalities, and I did a lot of other things in my life that I studied or I developed. And when I began to cultivate feminine power, they came together and they integrated at a higher level. And there are certainly times where I draw on that make it happen power in arenas, in ways where it's useful. Because I think that's part of what it is, it's learning. Like, when is it useful to use masculine power? When is it useful to use feminine power?
Correct.
There are these different arenas. It's not that you want to start using, one is better than the other, so to speak.
So that's using discernment and choice, which I'm really focused a lot on in my teaching as well. Like having that discernment to make a choice on how you want to move forward, right?
Totally. You can create a plan and a strategy for all the thing, where you have a list of all of the things that you have to get done. And, you can have a structure of accountability with a masculine system of power, with a project management sheet, but you can't create team cohesion.
Right.
You can't project manage team cohesion.
Correct.
Right? And when you have cohesion, there's an energy that's greater than the sum of the parts. It's available to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's both. It's both the masculine and the feminine integrating all the time.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, so can you share now the 8, do you call them keys?
Well, I would say that they're key areas. I'd say there are 8 areas of feminine awakening, and I love sharing these because what I think it does is it helps us to give language to this burning yearning that we feel that we just can't name or understand.
I'm so excited. Go for it.
That we often just wake up in the middle of the night saying, I'm I'm like pregnant with something. I don't know what it is.
I get that.
So what we're like crazy on fire with as women at this particular time, millions of us. So there's eight key areas. So the first is there's a deep yearning that we are feeling for our own authentic presence to be fully visible in the world. So where we're really seen and known as the most powerful expression of who we are. So tell me what your experience is of this. Like there's a sense, there's someone I was born to be, right? Like there's a woman of depth and wisdom and substance and presence that is like trying to emerge through me.
Right.
Right. So, and it's not confidence and power as we've seen it modeled in the world. Like we've seen this kind of modeled in the world as like, to be powerful, you have to have this kind of hard certainty. Like I know all of the answers.
Right.
Which isn't really true or authentic. In fact, kind of a lot of gender differences in the workplace, women are actually more tuned into what they really don't know. And so, the problem with that is we're less confident when we don't feel certain, because power is defined in culture as having certainty. So to be able to learn how to show up in ways that are incredibly powerful without the push and shove, without the kind of false confidence or certainty, in a way that we can actually be, have the experience of being fully ourselves. That's a really huge key area.
It is huge. it's yeah. I can very much relate to that.
The second area is in our relationships. And I'm just going to take our romantic relationships as one of the areas. There's obviously our friendships and parenting, but we have a lot to get through. So I'll just talk about our romantic relationships. So the yearning in our romantic relationships, it's to be unconditionally loved for who we are and really supported in who we're becoming. So the yearning is not just for safety and security. Like it's a wonderful thing. We want to have secure attachments. We want to have a sense of home. But fundamentally, we're yearning for growth-oriented relationships where there is support for our growth, and there is support for our development, and there is support for our evolution. And the primary purpose of us coming together is really to support each other to realize our potentials.
I love that.
So that's a deep yearning, and so, how to create that in a world where we have all of these old structures of, the purpose is to come together just to, create safety and security, to raise children, and all the kind of gender roles. We don't necessarily have the skills to orient to that new paradigm yet. We're discovering that.
I love that because, you're talking about, I think of myself, right? We go into partnership or relationship not only with society, but all of our own idealized images of what, and our mess, right? We bring our mess to the relationship and our belief systems, and then the other person brings theirs. And to be able to have skills where you're both focused on really potential is so helpful. And I think in my second marriage, we're still working on that because we brought all of our stuff with us from the past marriages. And
totally. Yeah, and to have skills where there's support for that development and growth, to grow beyond it together, to grow beyond it, and we actually have the skills to become catalysts for each other, that this is a safe space and container for us to continue to grow and develop, in an ongoing way together. So the next area is our calling. And so the one after this I'm going to talk about is your career. Sometimes your calling and your career overlaps, but it doesn't necessarily have to. But I want to talk specifically about your calling and what the yearning is for our calling. So the yearning is, when we say I want to discover my calling or my purpose, or what that is, the yearning is to discover our own unique genius, what we are really gifted at, and the contribution that we could bring forward that perhaps no one else could. Each one of us have gifts and talents that the world has never seen and may never see again after we're gone. We sense this in our clearest moments. And to discover your calling, you have to discover what that unique genius is. And then you need to develop that genius. You need to actually grow and develop and cultivate that genius and have a context in your life where you can become world class in it, or really strive to become the best in the world at what you have to offer. Everyone has something that they can actually become the best in the world at, so to speak, in terms of like really a contribution that you can make. So it's in potential, but it needs to be developed. So one of my great geniuses is leading learning communities and creating contexts in which learning and development can happen at the deepest level. It was a gift, but I went then and I spent 10 years developing that gift, which then, has it come into its fullness. And then the final piece is you find the place where you can give the gift that you have or the genius you have where it's going to make the greatest difference. Right. And it's very different than following your passions and interests. So, for me, leading learning communities of women is the context in where the gifts that I have can have the greatest impact. Mm-hmm. I would never have guessed that was my calling. I wasn't really passionate about women's stuff. I was the woman who wore pants to the prom, who didn't identify with being feminine at all.
That's great.
But this was my calling. But so it's actually being able to understand how to find that, how to develop that, how to contribute that. Like that's really kind of what has the sense of being able to get this thing that's in you out of you into the world. So that's the yearning for our calling. And the yearning for our career. A career is really how we make money, what we're doing to make a living. And sometimes it can overlap completely with your calling. Sometimes it can partially overlap, and sometimes it might not overlap at all. And it's totally fine. You don't have to make a living at your calling to be fully self-expressed in this world. But what we do need to do is have a way of making a living that's really aligned with our values, where we can generate the financial resources that will enable us to live a fully actualized life.
Right.
So we absolutely need to, the yearning is I need to make a living in a way that's true to my values, where I can generate the financial resources to thrive. And the truth is, most of us don't need to become billionaires to be financially successful, right? Like the truth is that's something that is possible for all of us who are privileged enough to be in this conversation about our destiny to be able to create. So it's like finding and discovering how to do that. So for example, one of the women in one of my advanced trainings, she was a university professor, really gifted, crazy gifted woman, university professor in Columbia. And her calling was to really work with and mentor young girls in her country. Mm-hmm. And this was not something that was like a nonprofit thing. It wasn't something that she was necessarily making a living at or saw herself, but she was so compelled to this. But what she was able to do was through the work she did in Feminine Power, she had the confidence and support to go and launch her own consultancy, leave being a professor, become a consultant, a training consultant, and she tripled her income within a year. And suddenly she had the financial resources that she needed to be able to go and do the work with girls, to be able to travel and invest in her education, to be able to, really live the life she came here to live. And, that's the yearning. The yearning is I've got to be able to create the resources I need so I can really support myself and my family to, really actualize our fullness. So
you help women honor their yearnings in these areas of their lives and give them the tools to be able to really bring it to fruition.
Yeah, and I'll mention just the others briefly because I know we don't have that much time, but so the other areas are health and vitality, to feel body confidence, to feel like we can access a limitless source of energy, and vitality, even if we have a chronic health challenge, for that not to stop us. It's an experience of spiritual awakening. It's being able to have a connection to the infinite aspects of who we are in a way that we can really have a spiritual context for our life and grounded practice. It's to feel confident that we can manifest the desires we have for fun, creativity, self-expression, and play. If you always dreamed of going to Paris with your beloved in a convertible, that you have the power to create that. And finally, it's leaving a legacy. It's participating in making the world a better place in some way. And you bring all of these pieces together, and these are the yearnings that we're feeling as women to actualize, to self-actualize, to spiritually realized, to make a world-changing contribution.
Oh, I love that. The word that comes to my mind is brilliant, because I feel like you have honored your yearnings and all of the other women, thousands of women you've worked with over the years to create this, for them to be able to make life happen, which is what Women for One's slogan is. Like our byline is women that are making life happen instead of letting life happen to them. You're helping them to self-actualize, and not in a masculine, like, go do it, build a house, like you talked about, but really looking inside and diving into who they are to create and honor those yearnings.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, really brilliant. So thank you for offering that. I wanted to bring up a quote that you said, because it really brings me into my last question, which is, you said something big is happening for us as women, and we're on the brink of an evolutionary shift with the potential to alter the course of destiny. I love that. Like I because it's really where we are in our world in March 2016. It is where we are. So what do you see the role of the feminine evolving into for the next 5, 10, 20 years? Like, what's your vision?
Well, I think we're in the midst of another wave of the women's movement, and your work is a part of it. My work is a part of it. There's millions of women whose work and leadership and participation is a part of it. And even though there's a lot of the global work of gender equality is radically unfinished, and that work needs to continue, this new wave that's emerging really is about the reclamation of and the evolution of these feminine values and ways of knowing and creating that are the key to in our own self-actualization and our social transformation. So as women self-actualize, society and culture transforms and evolves. So you are creating this as an expression of your own actualization and potential. How many women are being catalyzed through that process? How many women are transforming their relationships? How many women are stepping into leadership? How many women are creating projects through our own potentialities coming forward and being expressed? We're actually elevating and catalyzing the larger world in its process as well.
Wow. And would you have something that you would offer as a piece of wisdom to a woman listening to this, as either a piece of wisdom or a first step? Like if they went on to your site, which we will have all the links of your different courses and offerings, what would you suggest to someone that wants to get started?
I think the thing I would want to tell you more than anything right now is that the potential that you sense for who you are, what your life can be, what your contribution can be in your clearest moments, that is real. That is absolutely real. And you absolutely have the power already right now in your connection to yourself, to life, to others, to bring it forward. And that it really matters. It really, really matters. And the extent to which our world is not working is the extent to which you, me, all of us are not realizing or actualizing the potential. And, the human life from the beginning of human history has never been about ourselves. It's been about really the larger whole. It's been about, looking at the next generation and, trying to survive. We're in the midst of a shift for the first time in human history where if you're feeling these higher yearnings, it's because you're in a place of incredible privilege of having been freed up from the task of surviving. And that we can now embrace the task of higher thriving. We can now engage a new noble struggle and heroine's journey to create a legacy of actualization, of self-expression, of creativity. And in that we can be courageous, not just for ourselves, but really for our larger world and future.
That's so beautiful what you just said. And I really love that right now you have the potential. If I could have told myself that 10, 12 years ago when I was in that dark space, I've started to discover that just in the past 5 years doing this work. So thank you for the work that you do for women.
Thank you, Kelly. So great to be here with you.
It is. It's wonderful. And everyone, we will have Claire's contact info, her website, Feminine Power, The Evolving Wisdom, everything on the description of this audio. And I really, really am honored to speak with you. And I hope we can continue the conversation another time, Claire. Thank you again.
Thank you, Kelly. Much love. Many blessings to all.